I would like to start actually with a disclaimer, because the title of the webinar might be a little bit misleading, and therefore I want to clarify that this talk is not about introducing Agile development, so it's not about what Agile is all about. I assume that this knowledge is present, or most of it is present, and the talk is actually, now that you know what Agile is, how do you actually make it happen in your company, in your team, so how can you introduce it to your team and your company? So this is what I will talk about today. And before I really want to start, I want to start off with a little bit more of my background. Michael has already stated some of it in the brief bio. However, what's really important here in order for you to understand why I'm talking about this topic is that in, well, what I call my former life, I've made a Bachelor of Education and Teaching, so I've been working as a teacher, and this also is still the reason for my interest in how can things like Agile really be introduced so that people really are on board and support it. Maybe a little bit of the other stuff so you know more where I'm coming from. So I'm originally, in my second life, originally started off as an engineer. I worked a lot with different languages. From the languages I'm stating here, you see that I'm kind of old, so C++ and Smalltalk. They're, not that much used anymore, but I did also some work in Java. Then design patterns is another area I did a lot with, and now Agile processes. And Michael said already that I published a book on Agile software development in the large, and more recently one on Agile software development with distributed teams. And those books are based on my work as a project or process coach in different areas, in different domains, so whatever it is, finance, automobile, manufacturing, or telco. Okay, so let's get started. What I see actually how people introduce Agile into their teams or into their organization is most often happening according to two different approaches. So the one is what I call the guerrilla tactic, and this is a approach that has been used in the early days of Agile, or more used in the early days of Agile. It's less used now. So what this means is that the team, so typically just a bunch of developers, they decided that they want to go Agile, and they just start off doing things. Typically, again, more in the old days, they started off using XP development practices, pair programming, test first, and all of that. So they started off as a self-organizing team and used that Agile approach. On the other hand, the other approach that I'm seeing that's typically used for introducing Agile is what I call supreme command. So it's more top-down that however, management might have read somewhere something maybe funny or not so funny that people claimed if you use an Agile approach, you will have a productivity gain of whatever, 600%, I think is the highest number I once read. So whatever, and every manager who reads that definitely wants to do that and have that gain, and therefore they decide to start off with Agile. But you can recognize in these companies is that you see very early the roles and responsibilities are straight out, so it's very clear who is the Scrum Master, product owner, and all of that. So what you can hear from my way of talking also, that supreme command is more typically used when introducing Scrum, whereas guerrilla tactic is more used when introducing XP. Also, for the supreme command, what I see there is that it's more likely that the whole organization is really incorporated, so that infrastructure quality assurance and also people who are watching the enterprise-wide processes are involved in this change. However, neither way is actually optimal. So looking first of all at the guerrilla tactic, actually, although the development practices, they are used a lot, it will never be a really successful transition if management is not involved. And one of the reasons is that if a team just starts off doing Agile, it still needs the involvement and direct access to the customer directly or via product owner or however. So it needs to be steered by somebody from the business side, because otherwise, by using the development practices, they will provide a product with a high quality, but it might be the wrong product because they never heard what is it that the customer really values. And additionally, even if they do frequent deliveries, like they deliver with every iteration and they have small releases and all of that, if they don't get the real feedback, so real feedback meaning from the business side, then again, the small release doesn't really help them that much. It does help them in terms of like quality, but not in terms of knowing if they really match towards the business goal. Now, similarly, if we look at the other approach, which is the supreme command, then we have a similar problem. So although we do have the roles in places, the responsibilities all laid out, and also that the organization is really aware of what's going on, we have that other problem that it kind of contradicts agility, because Agile means that we are all responsible as well for the process we are using. And, for example, having a self-organizing team that's commanded to do whatever the management then tells them to do, and even if it's Scrum, it kind of contradicts agility. And moreover, things like development practice, they are really, well, hard, if not really impossible to be commanded. So, for example, it's impossible to tell people just do pair programming or do unit testing or test first. And the reason is management can never control if they really do it in a meaningful way, and developers will never do it in a meaningful way if they have not really agreed to that value system and if they haven't got signal that they have bought into that approach. So it's not really possible to make those practices happen within a team that hasn't been convinced of or is not convinced of Agile at first. So what can we do, or what needs to be done? The thing is, what needs to be done is that we need the commitment from all sides. So neither top-down works nor bottom-up, so we need both. And the commitment means really also from people around, so like the customer awareness is needed, and also up to the organizational hierarchy we need the support. And this can be created by the project situation, for example, that the market demands to be more flexible, or maybe we have a quality problem, or maybe we are working in an area where we have frequent changes in requirements and this creates the awareness for Agile. Then there are other things like looking at reports. There are like Forrester or Standish report who have reported that Agile will help in many ways to make a project successful, and then generally articles and talks. So this is how you can create the customer and management awareness. Developers, more, again, also conferences, trainings, but also more that it's cool, it's state-of-the-art, people just do it, and therefore creating the awareness because the developers often want to be at the cutting edge. And generally, everyone should be made aware and